This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
All right, definitely going to be an interesting episode of Q&A here. Post-game Q&A after the Browns win versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the first question is from Useless Bread, who says this. Useless Bread says, sorry about that. To me, the win is only worth it if the Ravens can follow up and finish the job next week. It'll probably mean we'll have to trade up to get our quarterback, which even though I know AB won't get scammed, won't be cheap. We'll see where the Browns' cards lie at the end of next Sunday, right? I see a lot of people freaking out in one direction or the other. We'll figure out where the Browns, where their chances lie at the end of the season, and then what opportunities they have in front of them and what makes the most sense for them to look at and what doesn't, right? They might ultimately be in a place where a trade up makes a ton of sense and it's super affordable, and that's what they end up doing. They might be in a situation where a trade up gets out of their price range and they start to have to look at alternative options to fulfill the quarterback position. Really got to figure out what hand they're dealt, and we'll figure that out at the end of next week, right? Freaking out one way or the other. The Browns could swing from 7 to like number 2 in the draft order, depending on how things go on Sunday. So freaking out about draft position now, I would give that just give it about 7 more days, and then we'll see where they sit. As far as do the Ravens have to finish the job next week to make this win worth it for the Browns, I think that depends on who you ask, right? If you ask a player on that team, I don't think they care about draft position. I mean, I think that's the right take for the players on the team to have. I would not want to have a team full of guys who really cared about draft position, right? Like that wouldn't be good. I wouldn't want Myles Garrett to be in the pregame speech talking about we need to lose this game to get a quarterback. Like that would not make me feel like we're going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon. So, I think to the players in that locker room, they don't care if Baltimore wins or loses next week. They just care that they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. If like you're Joe Bitonio, right? It's your last home game. If you're Joe Bitonio, you're about to retire. You're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. It probably feels awesome to beat the Steelers in your last home game and have like one nice fucking memory at the end of this dog shit season that Joe Bitonio has forced his body through miraculously, right? Joe's back don't work no more. Joe's knees don't work no more. Some of Joe's toes don't work no more. His body don't work anymore. But he's still out there every week fighting his ass off, trying to play. Guys like Carson Schlesinger who are watching that example of Joe and saying, no, I'm not going to leave this field if there's a single drop of me that can play football. Like, to the guys on the field, it doesn't matter. To fans, I don't think it matters that much because your reward for the Steelers not making the playoffs is the Ravens making the playoffs. Does that make you feel better? Like, at least if the Steelers make the playoffs, you know that they're not a threat to win at all. If the Ravens make the playoffs, you open the door for it, and then they like make the Super Bowl, you're probably going to feel like not great about that either, right? Like, there's really not a scenario where this feels amazing other than like Pittsburgh losing and then firing Mike Tomlin. Like, if these two games end up getting Mike Tomlin fired, then yeah, it's going to be fucking awesome. Like, you know what I mean? Regardless of what the Ravens do for the rest of the season, we're going to feel amazing that like that Mike Tomlin and his pettiness got himself fired because he didn't want to put a functional game plan in this week because he was so focused on trying to stop Myles Garrett from getting the record. Yeah. Other than that, like I think the real value of the win is for the people in that locker room. And I do think that matters, right? Like for a Carson Schlesinger to feel like that work that he puts in is validated by giving that work a win matters. For Harold Fannin, who played through an injury, couldn't play through the game with the injury, but played through an injury this week to score the difference-making touchdown. Like, it makes a difference that you put the work in, right? Like, it feels like it matters. Now, when you have a team full of all the young players that the Browns have, a Mason Graham who's been working his ass off, right? You need a win to make it feel like it matters to these guys. Like they want to give a fuck about being a Brown at the end of the day. Does it screw up draft position? Absolutely. It screwed up draft position, right? And maybe in the big picture, we end up regretting that. But right now, you can only see what's in front of you. And if you're in that locker room, what's in front of you is, hey, you finally won, and it feels good to win, especially when that's your job, and you haven't done a ton of it. XYT Truth YouTube says, second halves of games have been stagnant all year. What do you think the Browns' second half adjustments, or do you see anything on tape that makes adjustments, but the quarterbacks aren't executing? I'm going to put this pretty simply. The Browns stagnate in the second half because they stink. And I'm not like saying that for comedic effect. I'm saying that because that's what's happening. Like in the first half, you could surprise a team, you can out game plan a team, but eventually they're going to adjust and they're going to take away what you're doing, and then you have to figure out something else. And if you're not a very good team, that part right there, the figuring out something else, is very difficult, right? This is what separates good teams and bad teams, right? Who's a really good team? Let's go and point out, let's talk about the Patriots, right? The Patriots are a really good football team, and they have a lot of ways that they can win games. So if you take away one path for them to win a game, right? Let's say you're going to say no more run game for the Patriots. We're taking away the run game. Well, Drake May can beat you. When the Patriots declare in the first half, this is how we're going to try to win the game, and the other team says, okay, we'll take that away. The Patriots have a way of adjusting and winning the game. The Browns don't, because if you take away what they are using to try to punch a hole in that game plan, they are not a good enough football team to have a counterpunch. And once you take that away, they got nothing else. So the offense becomes really limited, really predictable, much easier to stop in the second half of games. That's why that happens, right? It's why like Shador's production has dipped significantly against teams that are better in the second half of his run. It's why the first halves and second halves are so drastic, because they see what the Browns are going to do to try to take advantage. They stop whatever gimmick the Browns are using to try to create space. And once they are able to figure out the gimmick that the Browns are using, take it away. And then the Browns got nothing else. Same thing happened against the Patriots, ironically enough, right? I think what Mike Vrabel said, yeah, once we got done with all the gimmicks defensively, we were fine, because the Browns had gimmicks like hell at the beginning of that Patriots game. They had beaters and tendency beaters and everything. They were throwing all these gimmicks, and they were working. But then once you were out the gimmicks, then you got to play them straight up. And if you're not fucking good, you can't win straight up. And that's why the Browns stagnate, because more than likely in the second half of these games, they're being forced to play teams straight up, and the Browns aren't good enough to play straight up with most teams. They can play straight up with like Tennessee, They can play straight up with maybe the Raiders, but most other teams they cannot play straight up with because they're just not good, right? That's where I give like some slack for like, hey, the roster's just straight up not good in the second half of stuff. It's not necessarily because like your quarterback sucks or anything like that. It's a combination of like everybody's just not that good. You know what I mean? Like you just can't beat teams straight up. You need the help. Kyler says, what would my dream offseason overall and what would be my one or two hot takes I could see coming to fruition? Kind of early for that. My dream offseason is that the Browns end the offseason with a plan at quarterback that I'm excited about. Right now, I don't know where that's going to be, but I hope that they figure something out at quarterback that I could be legitimately excited about as a long-term solution. Not like, it might be cool for 2 years, or hey, it could be like it could be our Matt Schwab or some shit like that. Like I want an actual like hope for a long-term solution at quarterback. And what would be my one or two hot takes that I could see coming to fruition? One, I think people are vastly underestimating how aggressive Andrew Berry will be willing to attack the quarterback position. And my second hot take is I think that Cedric Tillman could be a 1,000-yard wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe I have a sickness. I just think that this dude could be a 1,000-yard wide receiver if we get a proper offensive line built. I think that this guy can get to that point in his career. I would love to see that happen with Cedric Tillman. So those are my two hot takes for the time being. All right, we're going to continue with the questions, but first I got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. All right. Does a 5-12 record bring back Knevin? Jimmy did say we have to do better than 3 wins, ending with 2 division wins. I mean, they got 4 wins now, so technically Jimmy doesn't have to look like a fucking idiot, right? If he brings back Kevin. That being said, I think this season exposed a bigger problem with Kevin, which is like the offense is still very stale from a design standpoint and not very impressive from a design standpoint. And that's been the case for 3 years. And at some point, you got to bring somebody in you think can do better. I did a whole video on it. It's not going to be easy to get rid of Kevin. Kevin has some things that he legitimately brings to the table that are going to be hard to replace. But I think that's the big question, right? Regardless of what the record is, how do you feel about that part of it? The actual offensive game plan structuring, the actual structuring of an offense. Do you think Kevin gives you a good chance to be the team that you want to be as that? Or do you think that he's not good enough to do that? Because I'm starting to have my concerns. I'm not even starting. I've had my concerns that he isn't. And I'm at the point now to where I don't believe that he is. Jinx2162 says this. Give me 1 second. How do the Browns navigate this quarterback situation? Doomed if we don't draft one, doomed if we do. 12 is definitely progressing, but not enough for me to say he's definitely the future. But I'm starting to subscribe to build the rest of the team and hope he is, or we find the guy. I personally think that if the Browns have a chance to take a quarterback, they should do it. If you want to build the team around Shador, you really got to ask yourself the question of like, how good do you think he is? Like, do you think he's the kind of quarterback who, because he's on a rookie deal, gives you a window to do anything significant? If the answer is yes there, then sure. If the answer is not yes there, then you gotta focus your resources towards somebody who does give you a chance to win in some kind of window, or else you're wasting time, right? Like, that's the thing. If your evaluation of Shador is like, yeah, I think he could be a extremely low-level starter in the NFL, like akin to Gardner Minshew. Nobody's going to make the argument that, oh, Gardner Minshew on a rookie deal, you can win a championship with him, right? And if that's who Shador is, and keep in mind, like, if you look up Gardner Minshew's first 2 years as a quarterback in the NFL, they are significantly more impressive than what Shador has done so far in his career. Then, like, you know, if that's where you think Shador is, or that's where I think Shador is, then I think the answer is obvious. You got to keep looking for another quarterback, because that's just not going to do it, right? That's not going to do anything for you. Like, you know, if you're building a team around the guy who maybe gives you a ceiling as like a playoff team, but not necessarily a playoff threat, then you got to find somebody else to build around. So, yeah, you only get to build around so many people. You can't just build around anybody. You got to make sure whoever you build around is worth it. Because if you build around somebody who's not worth it, you can end up very easily like the Minnesota Vikings, who have a roster that could be the 1 seed in the NFC right now. But, you know, they're kind of stuck behind number 9 out there in Minnesota. And that's kind of leaving them in a spot where they're not putting together teams that are taking advantage of the kind of roster that they have on hand. You know, so that's the big thing. Like, a lot can be lost here if you decide you're just going to build around him and kind of close your ears to the quarterback conversation entirely. You know, you can fuck up a lot here, because Miles isn't getting younger. Denzel Ward isn't getting younger. You know, you got a lot of key pieces to why this team could be good soon if they get the right quarterback. You know, that are getting older and older. And if you waste like 2-3 years trying to build around somebody who you don't really believe has that kind of a ceiling that you can win a championship with, then, you know, you've just definitively wasted time, you know. Gorgit, I don't want to be disrespectful, so I'm going to just say GJ or GS. Are we out of the Mendoza Moore sweepstakes with 4 wins? I don't see them trading up and giving the holes on the roster. I also don't think Shador is the answer. Too many interceptions, mental mistakes. Right? If we'd say the Browns say that those are franchise quarterbacks and they want to go after them if they have to pick, and they also are saying that they don't think Shador's it, why wouldn't they trade up for him? Like, there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, I think they should take him if they have to pick, but don't want to trade up for him. But it's like, if you think they're franchise quarterbacks and there's an opportunity to trade up and you don't do it, then why would you even have considered to take him early in the first place, right? So I think the Browns would be willing to trade up. Now, what does a trade up look like? You know, they're probably going to be within the top 5. So it's not going to be like 3 first, like everybody's thinking, right? Might be like a first swap, a late first, and then maybe a second round pick next year. And that ends up being the cost. So I don't see it being the big 3 first round picks price that people are throwing out there, but it could be something. And, you know, the way that the picks fall, is it possible for the Browns to be able to make a move in there and get their quarterback? Or do the picks go to 2 teams that are going to take quarterbacks? That's really the questions we got to get answered. before we really get too deep into this. My thing is, if you felt like they were worth taking in the top 5, you probably feel like they're worth trading up for from the top 5. So yeah, I really wouldn't rule it out. Kevin says this: how much would you be willing to trade to move up to grab one of Moore or Mendoza? Obviously, still would have to see how everything pans out, but how much more would you be? How much would you have to give a more competitive offer than the Jets? That's another issue right now. We're trying to spec out what a trade would look like. We're kind of dealing with the idea of the Jets more than like the reality of what the Jets are in a position to do or not do. Everybody sees that the Jets have this treasure chest of assets that they could use to trade up for a quarterback. Now, we don't know if that's what the Jets are going to do or even if that's what the Jets want to do. It could be that the Jets want to use those Trevor Trove of assets to go get a Kyler Murray, to go get a Lamar Jackson if he becomes available. There's been more and more rumors that Lamar might be available to the right price. They might be more willing to even. I seriously doubt they would do it for Tua, right? But maybe they're one of those teams, right, that wants to kind of kick the tires on something like that. Or maybe they want to see if Sam Darnold's available, right? Remember, like, Geno Smith got traded out of nowhere last year. So I think we're all assuming that the Jets are like, oh, we're going to use all these assets to get a quarterback in the draft this year. That might be the case, right? Or it might be the case that they take quarterback off the board entirely before we even get to the draft. Or maybe the Jets are thinking to themselves they want Arch Manning, which would make a ton of sense when you consider who owns the New York Jets and Woody Johnson. And the kind of, how do I put this in a school appropriate phrase? The kind of excitement that Woody Johnson has shown for the Manning family over the years, right? I don't know if the Browns are going to have to compete with the Jets, right? What I do know is that the price to move up in the top 5 is just significantly cheaper than like the price to move from like 15 to 5 or something like that, which is where people are getting these 3 first-round pick prices from. So we'll see what the trade-up price is. I don't think it's going to be as expensive as people are making it out to be, but we'll see. Chris Gillespie says, hey, Q, I love every single day the Cleveland Browns beat the Steelers, but do you think that win was worth the higher draft pick? If the Browns, like any of the college quarterbacks at this draft, they probably are going to have to trade picks to get the best one. Was it worth it? This is for time to tell. This is for time to tell, right? If the Browns had their heart set on whoever goes number 1 and the guy goes number 1 that they wanted to take and they had an opportunity to get him if they would have lost out, then yeah, we're going to look back at this and be like, damn, that was a missed opportunity. If the Browns decide, well, if one of these picks ends up being great, then yeah, we're going to look at it kind of crazy. If the Browns trade up and get one of these quarterbacks that they highly covet and it works out, then we're not going to give a fuck. And if the Browns don't trade up, don't take one of these quarterbacks, and both these quarterbacks don't work out, then we're not going to care. So, it's really just up to the future to determine. And there's just so much left before the draft that it's hard to even parse out what that could even look like. Devonta Travis says this: why are fans stuck on getting a quarterback instead of building around Sanders? There are so many more holes to fill. All of the O-line, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, tight end 2, another linebacker, DB, even strong. So I think you're just throwing shit out there now. The defense is not full of holes, man. Trading up gives you the picks that can be used. to draft those players. Yes, I know free agency is there, but let's not forget where the Cleveland Browns. I think Browns fans are stuck on getting a quarterback because they know that fixing the quarterback position makes all of those other holes that you mentioned a lot easier to fill. It's a lot easier to find good wide receivers when you have good quarterback play. It's a lot easier to find good backup tight ends when you have good quarterback play. It's a lot easier to find good offensive linemen when you have good quarterback play. Like, that's what people want. They want the Browns to have the best quarterback play possible. And what we've seen from Shedeur Sanders doesn't give you much hope that he's going to be like a franchise level guy. Like there's a lot of concern there that I think people who really, really like the idea of Shedeur aren't really acknowledging based on the play of Shedeur. And I think a lot of hand waving is happening in those groups of, oh, well, he's just young, he's a rookie, this, that, and the third. But I think people are really just hand waving away a lot of big red flags that come up with Shedeur. And I think there's some Browns fans that see that and go, I think I want a better bet at quarterback, because they know that fixing that position tends to make it easier to fix all of these other things that the Browns have that they need to fix. Even if you have to trade up for that guy, right? The Buffalo Bills traded up for Josh Allen. The Kansas City Chiefs traded up for Patrick Mahomes. Like, teams have traded up before, fixed things around that quarterback, and things have been fine. It could happen for Cleveland, but, I think people are just so worried about I think people just want to fix the quarterback position because they know what it entails. And that's kind of why I think people are focused on that. Kilo says this. 2 questions. 1, if Kevin wins against Cincy, does he save his job? I don't think it matters one way or the other. He will either keep his job or not based on what he's done from now and behind the scenes. 2, do you think Browns will sign somebody to compete with Shedeur in training camp? Almost certainly the Browns will sign somebody to compete with Shedeur in training camp. Carson says, Q, been with you since 2019. It's really simple as a draft a wide receiver with the first pick and an O-lineman with the second first-round pick. Thinking if you build around, unfortunately, Deshaun and Shedeur as a backup, we can make a true move in 2027. Given Deshaun Watson a year as a starting quarterback next year, after missing another 500 days, seems like a obviously bad idea. The last time you had Deshaun Watson coming back from a 400 plus day hiatus, he looked like he lost a lot in between that time. And at that time, he was under 30 without like the throwing shoulder injuries and the 2 Achilles tears. Now you're saying post 2 Achilles tears and a throwing shoulder injury, let's roll back out Deshaun Watson after a 400-day hiatus, after we've seen what these hiatuses have done to him, right? Took 2020 Deshaun, made him look like whatever Deshaun's been. Don't know what the next hiatus is going to do to him. And we're just going to roll with that? I don't know, man. I don't think you can go 3 years searching for a quarterback. Like, you get 2. Deshaun flamed out last year. You spent the last offseason looking for solutions. Okay, you didn't find it. You got to figure out what you want to do this offseason. I don't know if you can just sit around and be like, oh, we're going to get to 2027. Like, you got to pick a draft class and you got to just try to shoot and get a quarterback, man, sooner than later. Or else people are going to get fired. Like, people are going to get fired in the middle of the season. You're not going to have the continuity to develop a quarterback. We're going to be back to Jimmy Haslam picking GMs. Like, there is a timeline here that the Browns have to hit, and we cannot continue to just put together 3-win season or 4-win season after 4-win season and think that, like, the main structure that we're relying on to develop these picks isn't going to change, man. Like, if you do this shit and you stink, like I think you're going to stink, then people are going to be gone. Like, people who matter towards the continuity and development of the roster are going to get their jobs taken away. And it's going to make it harder to find a quarterback, not easier. Like, this is the sweet spot where you have some of the continuity to be able to attack the position while maybe even being able to add a coach who can be around that position and support that development and then commit to it. But after this year, it gets very, very difficult to envision that. It just feels like after this year, if you stink again and there's no hope at quarterback on the roster, everybody's getting fired. And I think that's ultimately the fire that the Browns are playing with by saying, oh, we can kick the can down the road till next year. I don't think they believe that. I think they figure they got to get something concrete this year. And I think they'll act accordingly. But we'll see what happens. You have a great day. Have you better night. Peace.